Hi, before I kick off this session, I wanted to thank everyone at Microsoft, our customers and partners for helping us get to the #1 spot in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for Unified Communications as a Service. It's quite an honor among stiff competition from Cisco, Zoom, 8x8, and RingCentral, not to mention many others. Now, it occurred to me the other day that I haven't actually done a deep dive session on the easiest way to add telephony to Microsoft Teams using Microsoft's own calling plans. I've done sessions on Teams Phone or comparing different PSTN, public switch telephony options like Operator Connect or Direct Routing, and even a session on Teams Phone Mobile, but nothing that actually dives in deep into calling plans. And this, again, is the easiest way, available for companies of all sizes, from small enterprises to medium and large. And there's been a lot of updates that have happened recently. So consider this your December 2022 update with all the relevant information and all the common questions that I get from my customers and others. And by the way, if this is your first time tuning in to this channel, my name is Shervin Shafi, and I'm a principal technical specialist at Microsoft. Okay, so before we dive in deep into calling plans, it's probably warranted to kind of review the different options, right? We've done this in the past, but again, consider this your December 2022 refresher. Now, on the left-hand side, we have the main topic of conversation for this presentation, which is our Microsoft calling plans, right? And the idea here is that Microsoft becomes your operator. I mean, think about it. How cool is that, right? You're getting your application from Microsoft, you're paying monthly for unified communications as a service. The Teams application can run on your device of choice, and Microsoft is providing you a phone number as well. So that's super cool. Now, if you think about it, the reasons why you'd want to do this is first, you want to get started quickly. It literally takes minutes to just go into our admin site and pull a number and you're off and running. The value of simplicity in one solution all from Microsoft. And if you don't really have any existing phone numbers or public switch telephony network infrastructure, or if you do and you're okay with porting those over to Microsoft, that's another reason. Also consider that today this is available in 35 countries, right? We just added Mexico to the list of countries, so every once in a while we add one or two more countries, so this list is growing. And if you value maybe options like a pay-as-you-go model, if it's available in your country. So moving on to Operator Connect. What are some of the reasons why you'd pick that? Well, number one, if you want a pure cloud solution, meaning you don't want to have any equipment on premise, and by the way, the Microsoft calling plan is obviously a pure cloud solution as well. If you have some PSTN infrastructure like your trunks, for example, let's pick AT&T or Verizon in the US. If they're providing you your trunks on premise today, chances are that they can just connect through their cloud to your Microsoft tenant, and basically you can reuse all your numbers and you maintain your existing contract, and so you don't have to really port over anything. It's just that they're shifting it from on-premise to the cloud. And then also, if you want to have maybe interrupt with your existing phone system, then this is allowable under Operator Connect as well. And then there's a bunch of locations in the world, some of which Microsoft doesn't have calling plans in yet, but Operator Connect providers do. So those are some of the reasons. And now moving on to the last one on the right-hand side, which is direct routing. Direct routing is really the most flexible way of connecting to Microsoft for telephony. And it's really all about maybe reusing your existing infrastructure and your existing contracts with your telco providers. So if you have existing PSTN infrastructure like session border controllers or even your voice trunks, you can reuse those and just basically plug them into your Teams tenant. You can also integrate to your private branch exchange, which is your PBX or your phone system. If you have analog devices, you can connect them using SBCs. This is really the most flexible in terms of availability as well. So Operator Connect might be limited to maybe 50 or 80 countries, calling plans to 35, but with direct routing, you can use the local telco providers and just connect them via an SBC to our Microsoft tenant. So it basically allows you to have phone numbers in any country in the world essentially because you're using the local telco providers there and this technology. And also finally, if you have any survivability needs like the Survivable Branch Appliance, the SBA, then that's another reason why you would use direct routing. Now, one other thing on the bottom here is that you can see you may use a hybrid model of direct routing, operator connect, and calling plans in the same tenant. This is kind of a mix and match ideology, right? If you don't have to feel like you're stuck with any one of these options, you can mix and match. You can put 5 users on this, 10 on that, 100 on that, and do whatever it makes sense. Maybe in one country you're using Operator Connect, in another that Microsoft has calling plans, you use Microsoft's calling plans, and in places where Operator Connect or calling plans don't exist, you move over to a direct routing technology. So it's very flexible. Really, it leaves nowhere that Microsoft can't offer calling plans in. Now, if you're very attuned to this technology, you'll probably notice that one of the options is missing from this slide. Can you guess what that is? So yes, you've guessed it, it's Teams Phone Mobile. That's what was missing from the last slide, and that's really the fourth way of being able to add PSTN or phone number to Teams to give you Teams Phone. And I'm not going to go into too much detail on what Teams Phone Mobile is because I just recently did a video on it and it goes into a lot of depth. So check that out if you're interested. But I'll just say that it's a way of collapsing your mobile number and your Teams number into one agreement with a provider like Verizon, for example. And another way to look at it is for all of you guys that have like an Apple Watch, you can actually add an LTE or 5G, a phone number to it, and it's the same one that it would be on your iPhone. And so when someone rings your number, your watch and your phone ring, and if you leave your phone behind and you go for a bike ride, because your phone has an LTE or 5G connection, it'll ring as well. Same thing with this Teams Phone Mobile. If you're not at your desk and you don't have Teams running or even the Teams app on your iPhone, because it's one number, a SIM card that gets put inside your iPhone or your Android device, it'll ring when someone calls your office line, and it'll also ring your desk when you are in front of your computer or you have the Teams app. It's a really, really cool technology. So again, check out that video if you want more information. So 4 ways of getting a phone number from Microsoft. Now, let's talk about the calling plans. Okay, so let's look at Microsoft calling plans in a little bit more detail. Again, this is where Microsoft is your operator. And number one is the rapid provisioning, right? This is the ability for you to procure and assign numbers to users in minutes. It literally is minutes. I've done it myself. You basically don't have to have any equipment on premise anymore. Everything becomes a service. Everything becomes a cloud service, which is fantastic. The other thing is number porting and dynamic emergency calling. So the idea is, if you want it to be really simple, you can just get new numbers from Microsoft and then that just happens in minutes. If you are stuck with your number, and trust me, I like my mobile number, for example, I've had it for a while, you want to be able to have that ability to port that number over from your existing carrier to Microsoft, which is certainly a possibility. And at times it happens a lot faster in certain countries because of the rules and regulations. Like the US is really good. In other countries, it can take several weeks or months. So just kind of be aware of number porting. I hear that it can be a nightmare in some scenarios. So just kind of figure out if you're okay with the number porting process or if you're just okay with getting fresh numbers. And again, like I said, it depends on the country. On the E911 scenario, we do a fantastic job. And I've done sessions on E911, so definitely check those out for more information or details. But we certainly meet all the regulations on the legal side about E911. Now, the other aspect is calling with confidence, knowing that you have enough minutes. So the thing is that we have different plans, and I'll review this actually in the next slide. And depending on the plan that you have, you get allotted a set number of minutes. And if you go over those minutes, then there's something called communication credits, where we're not going to stop you from not being able to make calls. We're just going to charge you per minute rates, which I'll discuss a little bit later on. Also, you're not stuck to just making local calls. You can also make long distance calls, international calls. We have different plans that allow you to have either domestic or international calling. And again, even with those, if you go over, you can use this idea of communication credits, which I'll explain in just a little bit. And then finally, one of the reasons why I wanted to do this video is because we have a new calling plan type, which you'll see in the next slide, and that's a pay-as-you-go. And there's been some discussion about it. I actually chose not to do a video on it because, unfortunately, it's not available in the US. Okay, so I was like, well, that's a pretty big market. There's plans on making it so that it does become available in the future. I know our product group is working on it, but it is available in many other countries around the world. So definitely, this is really cool because you don't have to, you don't get any minutes. You just pay per your usage. These are some of the reasons. And now let's look at the actual plans. Okay, so let's look at the actual Microsoft calling plans. And at the moment, we have 5 different plans. And I say at the moment because this is technology, right? Things are always subject to change. So make sure you're always checking your tenant because announcements come in there. And there's also a really cool availability link that I'll share with you a little bit later where you can see what's available in each country. But right now we have 5 different plans. And the first plan is the pay-as-you-go plan. And this is really cool because you're just really, as it says, you're paying for what you use. And from a domestic outbound calling perspective, it breaks down into a zone 1, which there's a baseline fee of $2 per user per month that you're paying, and then you pay for your minute usages. And then in zone 2, it's $3 per user per month, and then you pay for your users. And then if you look at this footnote, footnote number 1, pay as you go. Pay as you go is not yet available in US and Puerto Rico based customers. And like I said, that's why I never did a deep dive session on this. I think eventually it will become available in the US. I don't know when, but it's available in a lot of different countries. The second footnote for the $2 and $3, it's basically saying that zone 1 is defined as US, Puerto Rico, Canada, and the UK, and then zone 2 is all other calling service markets. And you're probably thinking, didn't you just say it's not available in US and Puerto Rico? So why is zone 1 that? Yeah, it's very confusing and I'm going to try to clear that up for you. Basically, if your tenant is based out of a country like, let's say, London, England, and you have some users in the US, because you're like a British company and you have some users in the US, you can actually assign pay-as-you-go domestic calling plan to those users in the US because your tenant is not based in the US or Puerto Rico. On the other hand, a lot of the companies that I work with, they have their tenant based in the US and they have users in different parts of the world, like in France and England and Italy and so on. In that scenario, you cannot use a pay-as-you-go model because your tenant is based in the US. And again, I think eventually this will get rectified, but at the moment, if your tenants are based in these zone 2 countries, and there's a list of those, then you're fine with the pay-as-you-go models, even for users in the US. I hope that clears it up. Now, the other plans are not as complicated, right? And basically, we have a 120-minute plan, a 240-minute plan, a domestic plan, and an international plan. And so it's simple in the sense that, first of all, we only charge you for outgoing minutes, right? Outbound calling. Anytime you receive a call on your team's phone, we do not charge you. We do not count that against your plan. It doesn't matter which plan it is, the pay-as-you-go or any of the 4 other ones. You're only paying for outbound calling. And basically, I think it says that minutes limits are applied toward outbound minutes per user per month, and they're pooled at the tenant level by the calling plan and the geography type. I have a slide that shows this graphically what this means, but it's not that bad. I'll explain that in a second. So 120 minutes for domestic outbound calling per user per month, that's pooled. And there's a price, there's a list price here. And then also the 240-minute plan for domestic outbound calling there's the price here. Also the domestic plan, it's very interesting because the price is also $8, but it seems like you get a lot more than the 240 because you're getting 3,000 minutes per user per month for users that are based in US, Puerto Rico, Canada, and the UK. And then in all other markets, again, like consider like France or Italy or Ireland and so on, they are getting 1,200 minutes per user per month. And instead of $8, those other markets have to pay a little bit more per month. So that's the domestic plan. And then the international plan is essentially 3,000 minutes per user per month, kind of like the domestic one in the 4 countries. And so the actual domestic outbound calling basically means that if you're calling someone in the same country as you. So if I'm in Canada, I call someone else in Canada, that's a domestic call. If I'm in Mexico, I call someone else in Mexico, that's a domestic call. But if I'm in Mexico and I call someone in Italy, that's an international call. And so on the international plan, you get 600 minutes per user per month. Again, that's pooled as well. Now, you might be wondering, well, what happens if I have a domestic plan and I place an international call? In that case, like I said, we don't actually block you from doing this. We just charge you a per minute rate using communication credits, which I'll explain in a second, but you have to assign it to that user. So if that user has a communication credit assigned to them, then they can make international calls, even if they have just a domestic plan. Now let's look at these footnotes as well, the last few. Only assigned licenses count towards total pooled minutes, not the total number of purchase licenses. So that's really interesting, right? And it's a good caveat for you to understand. So the thing here is like if you buy 1,000 licenses, but you only assign 100, only those 100 are going to be pooled at the tenant and country level, which I'll show you, not all 1,000. So you have to assign them. You can't just buy them. So make sure you assign them. And then there's a link for more information, which I'll share with you in a little bit. So I hope this makes sense, the 5 different plans. So now let's look at this calling plan, the pooling minute example, right? Because like I said, the minutes are pooled. So it's not too complicated. Basically, every user gets their own plan, right? So like I showed you guys, we have the 120, 240, 3,000. So the first thing to understand, the same plans are pooled. So all the 120s are pooled, all the 240s are pooled, all the 3,000s are pooled. So they're all independent of each other, okay? So you don't pool the 3,000 and the 120 together. Each of them is in a separate bucket. The other thing is that minutes are pooled at a plan and country level. So each plan and the country. So here's some examples, right? We have UK domestic, we have US domestic, and then we have US domestic and international plans, right? So basically in the UK domestic, if users have a 1,200 minute per user per month plan, which we don't even have that plan anymore, so this is an older slide, but it gets the point across. And you have 5 users, so those 5 users, all their minutes are pooled, so you get 6,000 minutes per user per month in that country with that same type of plan in the UK, okay? So if Bob uses a ton of minutes and Sally uses a few minutes, it doesn't matter. It's from the same pool, okay? Now, on the US domestic side, if you have 5 users that have the 3,000 minute plan, you get 15,000 minutes per user per month, right? Per month. And the other thing is, this is not like your old Verizon cell plan that had rollover minutes. The minutes don't roll over. Once the minutes that are in the pool, the end of the month comes and the next month starts, you start all over again. You don't roll over the minutes. Okay, that's a common question that I get. Here you have 15,000 minutes that are pooled, And notice what's in the middle here, right? Cannot share pooled minutes. And this is basically saying between countries, between the UK and the US, even though you're the same company and it's using the same plan potentially, you can't share them. It's stuck in that country. Same here, you can't share pooled minutes across different countries or even across different plans because this is a domestic plan, this is an international plan. And then this right hand side example that has like the domestic minutes, which is 3,000 for 5 users, and a total of 3,000 international minutes because you're getting 600 minutes per user per month times 5. Now, what's interesting here is it says whichever is consumed first. So that's an additional caveat with the international plan in that if you have 3,000 pooled international minutes and 15,000 domestic minutes, if you end up going to 3,001 minutes, even if you have 15,000 minutes left on the domestic, your plan is done, and you start using communication credits. Okay, so that's something to be aware of. And by the way, what I end up recommending to a lot of my customers is if you're a heavy international user, then yes, maybe it makes sense to get the international plan. But if you're just kind of an ad hoc, making international calls once in a while, just get a domestic plan and get communication credits and pay per month for whatever your actual usage is. That probably makes more sense. Okay, so I hope the pooling example makes sense, but let me show you what communication credits are high level so at least you have an understanding of that as well. Now the fun stuff, right? Communication credits overview. And like we talked about, communication credits are basically enabling additional capabilities beyond what's included in audio conferencing and the calling plan subscription. So again, the idea here is that if you have X number of minutes for domestic calling or international, or if you're a domestic calling plan and you call international, then this is kind of like the catch-all, where basically we're like, okay, you're just going to pay the per minute rate now that you've gone beyond the confinement of your plan that you've subscribed to for that particular user. And again, the key is not only do you create a communication credit bucket of money basically, because this is essentially a prepaid billing model. So you have to create it and you're paying for it and you're putting like a bucket of money in there, like 500 bucks or 1,000 bucks or 10,000 bucks, whatever you decide. And then it's used not just for calling plans, including the pay-as-you-go calling plans and the fact that you can make international outbound calls and international outbound calls to any country not included in your service plan as well, and also the ability to overrun your subscription, right? The minutes that you get. But it's also used in audio conferencing scenarios, right? So if you're calling into a toll-free dialing conferencing, or you're dialing out to pay-as-you-go countries, or you're dialing out to conferencing to included zone A countries after the monthly allocation of minutes has been consumed. So there's different scenarios on the audio conferencing side, which by the way, we do a really good job of including dial-in minutes for free for our audio conferencing. It's just some of these dial-out scenarios and the toll-free numbers. But also on the calling plan side, the communication credits get used. Now, one common question that I get, kind of like that rollover minute question that I got for pooled minutes, which we don't do rollover, is the communication credits, because they're prepaid, then they actually, if you have a bunch of money left, make sure you use it within a 12-month period. Because after that 1 year is up, then that money just kind of vanishes, right? So we don't roll over that money that's in the communication credits either. So a smart thing to do is to basically, you can set a threshold. I don't know if any of you guys out there use like a Starbucks card, but with Starbucks, you can put 25 bucks on it, and then you can say, hey, when it dips below 10 bucks, go ahead and charge my credit card another 25 bucks, and then it takes it from 10 plus 25, it takes it to 35. So you can set a threshold in the same way with communication credits. You can start off, you can put 500 bucks in, and then your users are basically using it for their different use cases that we're showing here. And when it dips below a certain threshold, like 250 bucks, you can add another 500 bucks to put it back to 750. So instead of putting a ton of money in there, if you don't know what your use cases are and what your spend is going to be, and then after 12 months you lose that money, put some money in there, not too much, 500 bucks, 1,000 bucks, whatever your enterprise needs, and then put a threshold in there so that when it dips below, it just auto replenishes another X amount of dollars that you choose. So that's how communication credits work. Okay, we're getting close to, figuring out all of this calling plan stuff, right? So this is not too complicated. Essentially, what we're saying here is that Microsoft calling plans are available in 35 countries. And like I mentioned in the beginning, we just added Mexico to the list. And every once in a while, we're adding a few more countries. So this list is growing. I think when I joined Microsoft, we were in the 20s. Now we're in the mid 30s. So we're making some really good progress. And again, if you are in a country where we don't have a calling plan, that's okay. Use direct routing, use Operator Connect, use pay as you go in some of these countries. And again, you can also mix and match. So 35 countries available for calling plans today, which is December of 2022. So what's the point of all this, right? We talked about calling plans. We talked about the details of communication credits and pooling and all this stuff. I think really the point is that you can set up your calling plan for your organization as quickly as in 6 steps. So let's review these 6 steps together. 1, find out if a calling plan is available in your country or region. So that list of countries was a slide below. I'll share with you a different link you can check as well. Buy and assign the licenses. Make sure that your users have the right license for Teams Phone and get them a calling plan or some other PSTN option. And then once you get those phone numbers that actually show up in your tenant, then you want to add an emergency address and locations for your organization because we need to know where to send the ambulance, the fire truck, the police to when someone calls 911, right? So put their address in the tenant and then assign an emergency address and a phone number to the user, and then you're done. Tell your users that now they have a phone number in Teams. People from the outside can call them. It's not just point-to-point calling, peer-to-peer calling, or even federated calling, which we offer for free, voice over IP in Teams. Now, your mom, your dad, your brother and sister, anyone can give you a call. They don't even have to be using Teams. You just have a phone number, which is fantastic.
So remember all those wonderful links that we looked at? I'm going to drop them in the comments too. It starts with the Teams admin guide under voice and phone system, PSTN connectivity options overview. So if you look here, pretty much everything we talked about, the calling plan, operator connect, Teams phone mobile, direct routing, there's much more information here. So take your time, read through it. If you want additional information, it's all here. And on the left-hand side, we have all these different categories. So if we look under calling plans and calling plans for Microsoft Teams, domestic calling, international calling, pay-as-you-go, all the countries in pay-as-you-go, the zones, even information on how to buy calling plans. So again, tons more information, how to fund the pay-as-you-go calling plan, additional links inside these links, which calling plan is right for you. I hope I was able to answer that question, but here's more information to help you kind of identify what makes most sense. And then even setting up calling plans. At the end, we talked about 6 steps to basically go through and basically assign Teams phone licenses. And so here's more information on those 6 steps. And then if we scroll back up, country and availability, this is a really great link because there's a drop down where you can scroll through all the different countries. And if we scroll all the way down, we can look for, let's say, the US. And when you select a country, it'll tell you what's available from the Microsoft Cloud in terms of audio conferencing, the phone system, what phone system features are available, calling plans that are available. Notice that pay-as-you-go doesn't show up here, but it will in other countries. And then can you make outbound calls to what countries? 196, especially if you have that international calling plan with the 600 minutes. These are all going to be included in terms of countries that you can make international calls to. And then if you scroll further down, toll and toll-free number services, the cities that we offer them in, our communication credits allowed. So lots of good information per country. And then if you look in the UK, for example, same thing. Any country you scroll through, it'll give you that information. And notice pay as you go is actually available in the UK and so on. So make sure you always check this out. It's always going to stay up to date. There's also a spreadsheet that you can click on and look at, but I would say between the spreadsheet and the site itself, I'd probably trust the site. It's probably more up to date because here under the calling plans for purchase, I actually didn't count 35, even though we offer calling plans in 35 today. But you can always look at this in terms of, a spreadsheet format of the calling plan minutes and availability and where can you get incoming minutes from and outgoing minutes and toll numbers and so on. So lots of great information. And as I scroll down, one more thing I wanted to show you here is there's a Teams add-on licensing link. And this is kind of important because if you are looking at deploying Teams Phone, then there might be some add-on licenses, not just the calling plan, but the Teams Phone standard license that if you have an E3 you need to add to the calling plans and communication credits. So talks a little bit more about any add-on licenses that you might need to get going. You can always search. So I'm going to search for communications here. And since we talked about communication credits, here's the link on that with essentially the same information we covered. But if you want to look into it more, what are communication credits, and then even how to set up communication credits, all that information is available here. Assigning an audio conferencing phone system calling plan license to your users, lots of good stuff. One other thing is we have a public site for Teams Phone that has a lot of great information in terms of feature set and customer references and even how to purchase it. You can buy now. There's a great Teams Phone and calling plan bundle with 3,000 minutes in the US for 15 bucks. And here, if you look at the rate sheet, if you're ever curious in terms of how much you'd be paying, you can scroll down to your country that you're calling from, say the US, and you're going to be paying in US dollars. And then you select standard subscription, download the rate sheet. And this tells you the per minute charges that you will be billed when you're using communication credits, for example. So from a dial out perspective, if you're in the US and you're calling Australia, you'll be charged 4.4 cents. It shows you the different prefixes that applies to. And if you scroll down and maybe you're calling Brazil, you'll be charged 2.4 cents.
And that's a wrap. I hope I helped really demystify Microsoft Teams calling plans and answer most of your questions. If I was incorrect about something or if I missed anything, just let me know. I'm certainly not perfect. I'm always learning as well. I hope you enjoyed this session. Consider subscribing, liking this video, and I'll catch you on the next one.